Hello everyone, my name is Nick Infernus and welcome back to another list video. Today we will be looking at the penultimate wave of Transformers Legacy, Wave 11, or Wave 4 of United if you want to go that route. So compared to the other waves of Legacy that we have so far, I'd say this is compared to the other waves of Legacy United, I'd say this is in third place. It's better than Wave 10, which is a wave that was a little bit worse than I remember it being, but it's still a good one. But waves 8 and 9 still run laps around both of them. It's also the first wave where I didn't go out of my way to buy everything, both because of my current situation, IRL, and also just because this is a wave of mostly repaints with one new mold. It's also the last wave with any new molds at all. So, in a way, it did help a little bit that I didn't have to buy everything because I kind of already know what my thoughts are on most of the figures in here. Still, I'd say the selection of figures is pretty good, so before I ramble on for too much longer, let's get started with the list at number 9, Deluxe Class Slipstream. The Windblade mold from Legacy is one of those figures that I loved initially, but over time has definitely soured on me a good amount. Like, I remember loving this thing when I first got it, and now it's a figure that I just think is okay at best. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't have any problems with the robot mode, even the backpack, which is mistransformed in these pictures. Like, yeah, it has a backpack, but it's at least compact enough to where I can be kind of okay with it. And plus, it's Windblade. That's never going to not happen. But the posing is below average. The transformation is boring. It's simple in a boring way, unlike, say, 86 Grimlock. And the jet mode is just really chunky looking. Like, something about it it's just a bit too, it's got too much going on for a jet mode. And one thing that's definitely turning me off from this figure is just the color layout. In robot mode, it looks great. Even if we have two different purples trying to compete with each other to be the main one, with the chest being a different shade of purple than the shoulders or the backpack or the wings. I'm also noticing that she has a little strip of blue on her torso that I think is supposed to emulate the cockpit. That's actually a really nice detail. I like that. And the blue looks really nice. But in jet mode, it just clashes. I don't know if this is accurate to how she appeared in Cyberverse, but as a figure, it's definitely off-putting. And I don't think the null rays are really working as well as the sword did. Like, yeah, the sword didn't have anywhere to go and roll in jet mode on Windblade, but here there's no good way to mount them. Like, I guess you could do the wings or the undersides of the forearms, but those are your only real options, especially because the backs of the shoulders are blocked up by the wings. So, so I'm still going to buy this because this is probably the only representation of Slipstream that we'll ever get for some time, but it's unfortunate that it had to come from a mold that's kind of mediocre. At number 8, we have Core Class Geocron, the last of our Rock Lords, and definitely an interesting one. When these figures were first revealed, I joked about how this guy had a peanut butter and jelly color scheme, and almost immediately after I put that video out, Perspective End put out what he called a Roasta Newsarama and said this thing looked like a turd. And my god, can I not unsee it now. That's not to say it looks bad. I think the color layout definitely has its charm, especially with the bright purples. Fun fact, purple's actually one of my favorite colors, so this is doing wonders, even if I don't actually plan on buying this. And, you know, it's still the Boulder Crash mold, so it still has a nice looking robot mode. It still poses really well. It still has a decent enough transformation, and I do like the trike. Even if it still has the giant stick hanging off its ass, the transformation has its fiddly parts, especially with the arms, and that head sculpt sure is a choice. Yeah, I think I definitely prefer Boulder Crash's visor and mouth plate, but then again, those are always awesome, so maybe I'm a little biased here. Between the two, I'd definitely say I like Boulder Crash more, but this isn't too bad, though I have to question why his name is so similar to, the Dark God, Unicron. Like, Geocron, are we trying to make a connection here? Because those purple bits do look like Dark Energon a little bit. Number 7 is a figure that I know everyone was excited for, but after handling another version of the mold, I've got to be honest, I'm not seeing the appeal that much. Leader Class Soundwave. Now, don't get me wrong, this is one of the figures that I went ahead and bought because, tape recorder Soundwave. But compared to the Siege one, which after some reflection I'm realizing is actually pretty great, this one definitely doesn't shine as well as that one does. Especially considering that this is something of a retool of that Soundwave. Like, the arms and legs work in the exact same way. At least they have the exact same skeleton. And the head does the exact same thing, as does most of the waist. But the torso is completely different. I'd say as far as robot mode goes, this is slightly more accurate. That was really hard to say. This is slightly more accurate than the Siege Soundwave was, though it is very strange that he still has the landing gear from that figure's spacecraft mode. And from the back, he does look a bit too wide. From the front, it's not too noticeable, but it's definitely noticeable from the back. Posing is, I'd say, about equal. This loses out on Siege Soundwave's ab crunch, but gains backwards butterfly. The transformation is where this thing really starts to lose me. It's like with Slipstream and Windblade, it's simple in a way that's just not satisfying, and it managed to somehow ruin one of the best steps about the Siege figure with the way the feet fold in. On Siege Soundwave, the way the feet folded in was really satisfying. You opened a panel, you folded out another panel, you flipped the feet back, and then you closed the panel, and even though it didn't click or snap in any way, it slid over the foot in a way that was just nice. It's kind of hard to describe without having the figure in hand, but it was just a really nice step. They did something similar for Cyclonus and by extension Metalhawk, so if you have those figures, it's something like that. Here, there's a lot more there's a lot more pegs and tabs that go into that particular part, and it's just a squishy affair that's not satisfying at all. And the tape mode, look, say what you want about Siege Soundwave Spacecraft, but at least you could say it was finished. This does not look finished at all, especially when you look at it from the sides, where they didn't even bother filling in the edges. And also, it looks better without flipping out these little side panels here. So this isn't a bad figure. I'd still say it's pretty good. And if you want a tape recorder Soundwave, it's still if you want a tape recorder Soundwave, this is probably your best bet unless you want to buy the Masterpiece. And one thing I will mention is that I do like the cassettes. Ravage isn't great, but Buzzsaw and Rumble are really good. And I'm also noticing that Rumble's head is mistransformed here. So it's a good figure. It's a good value for money since all of this did add up, if you do the math, add up to $50. But if you want the best Soundwave at a Voyager scale, I'd still say go with the Siege Soundwave. Because honestly, I was a little too hard on that figure myself. Now, at number 6, we have probably the most disappointing figure from this wave, G1 Optimus, or Deluxe Class Missing Link Optimus, if you want to call him that. And no, this figure isn't so low because it's an update of a G1 toy. That's actually what was making me really excited for it. It looks excellent in both robot mode and alt mode, very, very reminiscent of his original 80s toy, and it actually comes with a matrix that's not pictured in either of these photos for some reason. But really, just the way this thing feels is what puts it this low on the list. But the transformation has its frustrating bits where the truck bed has 3 separate sets of tabs where only one of them is actually good at holding this thing together. You have to snake the arms underneath the gas cans, and also the skirt has its issues where it has to peg into specific spots. It has to peg into the armatures that the front wheels are on. There's just more. It's a very squishy transformation as well. It's more frustrating than I prefer. Posability is still pretty nice, but his lack of heels makes him very tedious to stand, and it worries me a lot that his guns can't peg into his hands properly. The axe does fine, but the guns, with how fully painted they painted the handles, and it's some pretty thick paint, so it did cause the hands on mine to stress a little bit. They haven't broken, and I'm not really worried that they will break. But it's definitely an oversight. And also the rubber tires on this. Yes, this has rubber tires like with Beachcomber and Sandstorm, but unlike those, this guy can't roll. I guess Beachcomber didn't really do the best job at rolling either, but that's besides the point. This definitely rolls worse than that. I'd still say get this if you want to, if you want to experience G1 Optimus, like the G1 80s Optimus toy in some capacity. but definitely lower your expectations because it's really good. It's just not what I was hoping it would be. From one deluxe to another, at number 5 is Quake. So Quake is a retool of Skullgrin, which was pretty apparent when looking at the robot mode, but the tank mode definitely threw me for a loop when I saw the product images. Overall, the robot mode does a really good job of capturing that original design, even if it never appeared in any animated media, only comics. So honestly, this getting a toy was probably just because they did Spinister and Needlenose, so they just had to finish out the trio. And this is probably the second best of the trio. I like him more than Needlenose, but Spinister is still kicking the crap out of both of them. But yeah, despite being a retool, the robot mode does a really good job of capturing the character. It's actually significantly taller than Skullgrin, which surprised me, mostly because there are some parts that are making him look taller, that make him look taller than that original figure. Still has all the same posing that figure did, with its deep elbows and pretty standard lower legs. The transformation is pretty fun, definitely a more enjoyable affair than Skullgrin was, though the knees constantly popping off the shins does cause for some annoyance. And the tank mode, I can excuse it because of what it is, but I can definitely understand why some people aren't a fan of it. Me personally, I'm impressed that they were able to, turn Skullgrin's wooden plank with treads and a turret of an alt mode into an actual tank. So I'm okay with it. Like, I admit it's not great, but it could have been worse. Like, this could have just been just a straight up retool, just a repaint of Skullgrin with the same bullshit tank mode. And his Target Master buddies are also kind of nice. So yeah, a really good deluxe, and a much better figure, a much better version of a mold that was really let down by one of its modes. Number 4, we have Voyager class Metalhawk. And like with Slipstream and Windblade, this is one of those figures that I initially loved that soured on me over time. Now, obviously, this being in a higher place than Slipstream means that it is obviously I still think it's a really good figure. It's just that I don't love it like I once did. Like, looking at it then versus now, this figure does have a lot of problems. Its joints are looser, so the knees are already more frustrating than they were on Cyclonus. And he also likes to lean forward a lot. The transformation is less intuitive than Cyclonus, and as a result, less interesting and less satisfying. And the alt mode looks like a bath toy. I'm not even gonna lie. It just looks weird. It's a weird looking jet. But that doesn't mean that it's without merits. The posing is still really good, probably the equal Cyclonus. The transformation still has some fun parts left over from the retooled transformation. And the jet mode, it is still pretty impressive that they were able to get an Earth jet out of a space jet, even if the Earth jet doesn't look great. And the robot mode still looks just as good as it ever did, but this time in better colors. Like, that's really what's putting this thing over the original Metalhawk, is just the colors are a lot nicer. I believe these are the toy colors, because the show model, because the, so I haven't seen any clips of, I forget what part of the franchise Metalhawk's from, but I have seen like some clips, and his original Legacy figure matches the show model a lot more than the toy does. But honestly, the colors here are a lot more appealing. It's a less, sickly. It's a much richer gold, a more appealing blue, and the darker gray is definitely, definitely better to look at than the gray that they used on the original Metalhawk. So if you don't have that Metalhawk, then go ahead and pick this up. But if you have that, then I wouldn't say you need this unless you really want an upgrade. Getting to the top 3, we have the first of our Galvatrons, Core Class Energon Galvatron. This is basically just the excellent Energon Megatron from January, but in colors that make him look more like G1 Galvatron, which I find very interesting. And honestly, I would say I like this more than Energon Megatron, mostly because of the colors. Something about, gray, black, purple, and yellow is more appealing to me than the gray, blue, and green on the original. Maybe it's just the purple torso with the yellow wings behind it, and then the yellow missiles on top. But it's still a really good looking robot mode. It still poses excellently despite having very limited shoulders. Transformation is still simple but fun, and the jet mode is his jet mode from the show, even if it looks a little weird. This isn't necessarily something you need, but if you want it, it's still really good. Number 2, we have our other Galvatron, Armada Galvatron. I don't know what it is about the leader class Megatrons from Legacy, but they were just knocking it out of the park. And Galvatron's no exception. Now, I will say I do like the colors on this less in robot mode. Something about the overabundance of purple is just not working as well for me as it was on Megatron. I will say in tank mode, it does look a lot better with the tan taking over and the hints of maroon. That, and it's the Armada Galvatron mold, so the posability is still really good, and the transformation is still just as great as it was on that figure. Yet another gold standard of simple but fun transformations. And also, from what I've heard, the horns on this figure are actually glued into place, unlike Megatron, where I was a little concerned when they said that they were going back to windowed boxes with these figures, because I was worried that you would just see copies of this with the horns missing, but nope, they actually learned from that. See, the weird thing is, it's hard to recommend a lot of these because they're just up. It's hard to recommend either of these Galvatrons because they are just repaints of the previous Megatrons, because that's just what they did in the Unicron trilogy. But if you care that much, then I'd say they're still worth a pickup. They're both excellent figures. But first place has to go to Voyager Animated Motormaster. I remember I was rehearsing what I wanted to say to myself before recording this, and during that I almost called this guy Armada Motormaster, only to realize that that character does not exist. But yes, this is a repaint of Animated Optimus Prime from January, a figure that is currently in the running for Best of the Year, which should tell you all you really need to know about how good this figure is. Robot mode, still accurate to the design, posing is fantastic, transformation is fun, and the truck mode manages to improve on that original design by actually having wheels in the front. I will say I don't like the colors on this as much as on Optimus. On Optimus, it just looked like Optimus Prime's colors. Here, it looks more like clothes. Like, it looks like he's wearing a leather jacket, purple pants, and then black shoes with some gray cleaning gloves. Head looks nice, very, very reminiscent of Motormaster's design from Animated, even if none of the Stunticons appeared in the show. Similar to the Galvatrons, it's hard for me to recommend this one because, but this one's hard for me to recommend because this isn't really a character. But if you like the way it looks, it's still an excellent mold, so I'd still recommend it. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for my ranking of Legacy Wave 11. If you enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe for more fun content. See you guys in the next video. Take care, and Godspeed.